Cole had been a guest of the for exact 23 days. At least that was what they called him, a guest. But guests could leave whenever they wanted, and Danny had quickly learned that the massive crystal gates of the palace were not open to him. His cargo ship had crashed in the mountains 3 weeks ago, and the patrol had found him wandering through the snow with a broken arm and frostbite on his fingers. They had healed him with technology far beyond anything humans possessed. They had brought him here to the capital city, where towers of blue crystal rose toward a purple sky and warriors with silver scales walked the streets like gods. Impressive creatures. They stood 8 feet tall on average, with 4 powerful arms and skin that shimmered like polished metal. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and their voices rumbled like distant thunder. Danny felt like a child among them, a small, soft, fragile child who had wandered into a world of giants. It was different. Today, a messenger had come to his chambers with a son. The High Matriarch herself wanted to see him. Danny had heard stories about during his time in the palace. She was the ruler of the dominant clan, a warrior queen who had united through strength and wisdom. Some said she had never lost a battle. Others said she had killed a sand dragon with her bare hands when she was barely an adult. Danny did not know which stories were true, but he knew enough to be afraid. The throne room was vast. Pillars of crystal stretched toward a ceiling so high that Danny could barely see it. Hundreds had filled the hall, warriors and nobles and scholars all watching as Danny walked the long path toward the throne. His footsteps echoed in the silence. He kept his head high even though his heart was pounding. Upon a throne carved from a single massive gemstone. She was taller than most, and her scales were darker, almost black with hints of deep purple. Her 4 arms rested on the arms of her throne, and her golden eyes tracked Danny as he approached. She was beautiful in a terrifying way, like a storm or a blade. He stopped at the base of the steps and bowed his head. He had learned that much about custom at least. Said, her voice filled the hall without effort. You have been among us for many days now. My council has debated your fate endlessly. Some wish to send you away. Others wish to keep you here forever as a curiosity. A few have even suggested we simply kill you and be done with it. And he swallowed hard but said nothing. I've grown tired of their arguments, continued, so I have decided to settle the matter myself. I am offering you a choice, Dane Cole of Earth. Leaned forward slightly, and Danny felt the weight of her attention like a physical force. Leave tomorrow. We will repair your ship and send you back to your people with supplies and our blessing. You will tell them nothing of our location, and humans will not return to the region of space. That is the first choice. And wait, he knew there had to be more. Said, you may stay. You will serve as an ambassador between our people. You will open relations between and humanity, trade, knowledge, perhaps even alliance. That is the second choice. All buzzed with whispered conversations. Dane could see a prize on many phases. This was unexpected. Humanity was considered a weak species by galactic standards. They had no narrow weapons, no armor, no special abilities. They were small and soft and frail. Why would the High Matriarch want anything to do with them? Thought about Earth. He thought about his family, his friends, the life he had left behind. Then he thought about what this could mean for his people. A true alliance with a powerful species like that could change everything for humanity. Choose to stay, Dan said. His voice was steady despite his fear. Her ran through the crowd. Expression did not change, but something flickered in her golden eyes. Interest, perhaps, or amusement. Well, she said, but you should know that custom demands proof of worth. No one may stand beside me without first demonstrating that they deserve the honor. This is true for warriors, for advisors, and for ambassadors alike. He nodded slowly. He had expected something like this. All is simple, said. She raised one of her hands and pointed to her left. He followed her gesture and felt his stomach drop. Massive warrior stood beside the throne. He was even larger than the others, nearly 9 feet tall with arms like tree trunks and scars covering his silver scales. His eyes were cold and hard, and he watched Danny the way a predator watches its prey. This is Commander Vex said. He is the strongest warrior on the planet. He has never been defeated in single combat. He has killed more enemies than any living. He stared at the giant warrior and felt very, very small. Defeat him, human said, and I am yours. Hall exploded with laughter. Hundreds of voices roared with amusement at the absurdity of it. This tiny, soft creature against their greatest champion. It was a joke, a comedy. The human would be crushed in a second. He stood frozen as the laughter washed over him. He looked at Commander Vex, who was not laughing. The warrior simply watched him with those cold eyes, waiting. Dan looked back at she was not laughing here. She was studying him with an expression he could not read. There was a test, he realized, not just of strength but of something else. She wanted to see what he would do, how he would react. Took a deep breath. He thought about everything he had ever learned about survival. He thought about the history of his species, about all the challenges they had overcome against impossible odds. Humans had faced extinction more than once and had survived every time, not because they were the strongest or the fastest or the most powerful, but because they never gave up. Except, Dan said. Laughter died slowly. They stared at him with confusion and disbelief. Commander Vex tilted his head slightly, and for just a moment, Dan thought he saw something like respect in those cold eyes. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was there. The challenge will take place in 3 days, she announced. Prepare yourself, human. You will need every moment. He bowed his head again and turned to walk back down the long hall. They watched him go, whispering among themselves. He could feel their eyes on his back, their doubt and their mockery, but he kept walking with his head held high. 3 days to figure out how to defeat the most dangerous warrior on the planet. 3 days to find a way to do the impossible. 3 days to prove that humans were more than the soft, weak creatures the galaxy believed them to be. Cole had no idea how he was going to do it, but he knew one thing for certain. He was not going to give up without a fight. Spent his first night after the announcement lying awake in his chamber, staring at the ceiling and wondering what he had gotten himself into. They had given him comfortable rooms with soft beds and warm blankets, but comfort meant nothing when death was waiting 3 days away. Commander Vex could break him in half without a hurt. One swing of those massive arms and Danny would be finished. Danny had made a decision. If he was going to survive this, he needed information. He needed to understand exactly what he was facing and exactly what rules applied to the challenge. There had to be something he was missing, some detail that could help him. Outside a library. Danny had seen it during his first week, a massive hall filled with crystal tablets that held the recorded history and knowledge of the people. He made his way there as the sun rose over the crystal towers, hoping to find answers before time ran out. The library was quiet and mostly empty at this early hour. Only one figure moved among the shelves, an elderly with fade gray scales and a bent posture. He moved slowly, carefully placing tablets back in their proper position. When he saw Danny enter, he stopped and studied the human with curious eyes. You are the one who accepted the challenge, the old said. His voice was softer than most, worn smooth by age. I am Dan, replied. My name is Dan Cole. I am the keeper of the library. I have held this position for more than 200 years. The old tilted his head. Why are you here, Dane Cole? Most warriors spend their final days in celebration or meditation. They do not come to read old records. Hesitated, then decided honesty was his best option. I am looking for a way to survive. I know I cannot defeat Commander Vex in direct combat. He is too strong, too fast, too skilled. But maybe there is another way. Maybe the rules of the challenge allow for something other than a straight fight. Silent for a long moment, then he made a sound that might have been a laugh. You are clever for a human. Most would simply accept their fate and try to die with honor, but you are looking for a different path. Humans are good at finding different paths, Dane said. It is how we have survived. Keeper studied him with new interest. Then he turned and gestured for Dane to follow. They walked deeper into the library, past rows of crystal tablets, until they reached a section covered in dust, pulled out a tablet and handed it to Danny. What you have been challenged to is called the Trial of Worth, explained. It is ancient, older than the current dynasty. It was created in a time when the clans were at constant war with each other. The ritual allowed outsiders to prove themselves worthy of joining a clan through demonstration of their abilities. Look at the tablet. The symbols were unfamiliar but translated for him. Key word in the ritual is defeat, continued. The challenger must defeat the champion, but the ritual never specifies how. It does not say combat, it does not say battle, it simply says defeat. He felt a spark of hope in his chest, so the challenge does not have to be a fight. Necessarily, in the old days challenges were sometimes settled through contests of skill, tests of endurance, puzzles, riddles, or games of strategy. There are records of champions being defeated through wit rather than strength. Paused. But you must understand, Dane Cole, that no one has invoked the doctrine in centuries. They have become a warrior cult. They expect combat. They value strength above all else. If you choose a different path, many will see it as cowardice. I'd rather be alive and called a coward than dead and called brave, Dane said. That laughing sound again. You are definitely not like the other species we have encountered. They usually care too much about honor to think clearly. Spent the rest of the morning with learning everything he could about the Trial of Worth and the history of them. He learned that their species had evolved on a harsh world where only the strong survived. They had developed their incredible physical abilities through millions of years of natural selection, but their bodies were designed for short bursts of explosive power, not for sustained effort over long periods. They were sprinters, not marathon runners. For noon, Dane went to watch Commander Vic's train. He found a spot on a balcony overlooking the training grounds and observed as the massive warrior worked through his exercises. It was terrifying to watch. Vex lifted boulders that Dane could not have moved with truck. He moved with a speed that made him blur. His strikes shattered stone turrets in power. In terms of raw power and fighting ability, Vex was beyond anything Dane could ever hope to match. He knows something else. Vex trained in intense bursts, then rested for long periods. His muscles were built for maximum force, not efficiency. After an hour of training, the warrior was breathing heavily and needed to recover. A plan began to form in Dane's mind. That evening, Vex found Danny in the garden outside his chambers. The massive warrior approached silently, and Dane felt a chill run down his spine as those cold eyes fixed on him. And when Vex said, "I have come to speak with you," he stood his ground even though every instinct told him to run. "What do you want, Commander?" Vex was quiet for a moment, then he spoke in a voice that was surprisingly gentle. "I want to tell you that you should withdraw from the challenge. There is no shame in it. The High Matriarch will not punish you. You can return to your people and live your life." And blinked in surprise. "You are trying to help me." "Trying to prevent an unnecessary death," Vex replied. "I have killed many enemies in my life. Warriors who sought glory, invaders who threatened my people, criminals who deserve justice. But you are none of those things. You are simply a traveler who crashed in the wrong place. I do not wish to kill someone who has done nothing wrong." Studied the giant warrior. There was no cruelty in those eyes, he realized. No malice. Just duty, and beneath it something that looked almost like sadness. "Appreciate your concern," Dan said carefully. "But I cannot withdraw. This is not just about me anymore. If I lose, humans will be forbidden from this region of space for 100 years. But if I win, our peoples could become allies. That is worth risking my life for." Stared at him for a long moment, then he nodded slowly. "You have courage, Hugh, and I respect that even if I think you are being foolish." He turned to leave, then paused. "I will not hold back in the challenge. I hope you understand that." "Would not expect you to," Dan replied. Vex was gone. Dan returned to his chambers and began to prepare. He had 2 days left, and he knew exactly what he needed to do. They expected a fight. They expected a quick and brutal end to the soft little human who had dared to challenge their grace warrior. He was not going to give them a fight. He was going to give them something they had never seen before. He was going to show them what humans were really capable of. He was going to run. It was the largest structure Danny had ever seen. It was carved into the base of a mountain, a vast circular space surrounded by tiered seating that rose hundreds of feet into the air. Thousands of filled the seats, their silver scales glittering under the light of the twin suns. The noise of the crowd was like thunder, a constant rumble of voices and movement that shook the very ground. Stood at one end of the arena floor, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his life. The sand beneath his feet was packed hard from centuries of combat. Dark stain marked places where blood had been spilled. He wondered how many had died in the place, how many challenges had ended in broken bodies and shattered dreams. The other end of the arena, Commander Vex waited. The massive warrior stood motionless, his 4 arms hanging at his sides, his cold eyes fixed on Danny. He had come dressed in simple training clothes, no armor, no weapon. He did not need them. His body was wet enough. Above the arena floor, the High Matriarch sat on a raised platform with the best view of the proceedings, was dressed in formal robes of deep purple, and her golden eyes gleamed as she looked down at Danny. She raised one hand, and the crowd fell silent instantly. "Wit's a trial of worth," announced. Her voice carried across the entire arena without effort. "The human known as Dane Cole is challenged for the right to stand as ambassador between our peoples. Commander Vex has been chosen as the champion he must defeat." She paused. "Dane Cole, do you understand what is at stake?" "Do," Dan called back. His voice sounded thin and weak compared to hers, but he made sure every word was clear. "Then let the trial begin." It did not move. Vex did not move. The crowd waited, confused by the lack of immediate violence. Danny raised his voice again. "I invoke the right of challenge selection." Murmur ran through the crowd, leaned forward slightly, her expression curious. "Explain yourself, human." "Trial of worth does not specify combat," Danny said. He had practiced this speech dozens of times. "It says only that I must defeat the champion. According to your own ancient laws, I have the right to choose the nature of the contest." Murmur grew louder. Many were clearly surprised that the human knew their laws better than they expected. On her platform, smiled that small, barely visible smile. "It is true," she acknowledged. "What contest do you propose?" took a deep breath. This was the moment everything depended on. I challenged Commander Vex to a test of endurance. We will run laps around this arena until one of us can no longer continue. The one who remains standing is the victor. Arena erupted. Some laughed, others shouted in confusion, others simply stared in disbelief. Running. The human wanted to run. What kind of challenge was that? Commander Vex stepped forward and the crowd quieted to hear him speak. You wish to race me, human. You think you can outrun a warrior. I do not wish to outrun you, Dan replied. I wish to outlast you. Vex studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. I accept your terms. This contest will show the truth of things one way or another. He raised her hand again. The terms are set. Both competitors will run until one falls. No attacks, no interference, pure endurance. Begin on my signal. And Vex moved to the starting line, a mark carved into the arena floor. They stood side by side, the giant warrior towering over the small human. Dane could hear Vex breathing, slow and steady. His own heart was racing. Dropped her hand to begin. They started running. The first hour, it was not even close. Vex ran with powerful strides that ate up the ground, lagging Dane within the first 15 minutes. The crowd cheered every time the commander passed the human, mocking Dane's slow and steady pace. He ignored them. He focused on his breathing, on his footsteps, on the rhythm he had practiced for the past 2 days. The second hour, something began to change. Vex was still ahead, but his lead was shrinking. His powerful strides had slowed, his breathing had grown heavier. The muscles that made him so devastating in combat were burning through energy at a tremendous rate. He was not built for the kind of sustained effort. He kept running. His pace had not changed since the start. Step after step, breath after breath, he maintained the same steady rhythm. His body ached, but this was familiar pain. This was the pain of long-distance running, and humans had been dealing with it for millions of years. The crowd had fallen quiet. They watched with growing confusion as the impossible slowly became possible. In the third hour, Dane began to speak, not to Vex, but to the watching. He spoke between breaths, his voice carrying in the silent arena. Species evolved on a planet called Earth, he said. We were not the strongest creatures there. We were not the fastest. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. We were soft and weak, just like you think we are. Vex was struggling now. His forearms hung heavy at his sides, and his powerful legs were shaking with every step. But he kept running, driven by pride and determination. He had one gift that no other creature on our planet possessed, Dane continued. We could run forever. Our ancestors hunted by chasing their prey across entire continents. They would follow an animal for days without stopping, never letting it rest, never letting it recover. The animal would run faster, but my ancestors would keep coming. Always steady, always relentless. Eventually, the prey would collapse from exhaustion, and my ancestors would walk up and kill it without a fight. Listened in silence. There was not something they had heard before. There was not something they had ever considered. Call it persistence hunting, Dane said. It is the oldest strategy our species knows. We are not the strongest or the fastest, but we are the most relentless. We never stop. We never give up. We keep going long after others have fallen. 4 hours passed. 5 hours. The wind sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Vex was barely running now. His pace had slowed to something closer to a walk, and every step seemed to cost him tremendous effort. His breathing was ragged, his body covered in sweat, but still he moved, still he refused to fall. He was suffering too. Every muscle in his body screamed for rest. His lungs burned, his legs felt like they were made of stone, and his vision blurred at the edges. But he had been here before. He had run marathons on Earth. He had pushed his body to its limits many times. He knew how to keep going when everything inside him wanted to stop. The sixth hour began, and the arena was completely silent. Every watched with wide eyes as the human continued to run beside their greatest warrior. This was not possible. This should not be happening. The soft, weak creature should have collapsed hours ago. But Dane Cole kept running. After step, breath after breath, he showed them what humans were really made of. Moons had risen over the arena, casting silver light across the sand. The wind suns were gone now, replaced by a canopy of unfamiliar stars. More than 6 hours had passed since the challenge began, and still 2 figures moved around the arena floor. Cole had stopped counting the laps long ago. His world had narrowed to simple things. The next step, the next breath, the pain in his legs, his back, his lungs, the steady rhythm that kept him moving when his body begged him to stop. He had entered a state that long-distance runners knew well, a place beyond exhaustion where the mind takes over and the body simply follows. At him, Commander Vex was dying. Not literally, but his body was shutting down in ways he had never experienced before. His muscles, designed for explosive power, had nothing left to give. His forearms hung limp at his sides. His legs trembled with every step. His breathing came in ragged gasps that echoed across the silent arena. The crowd had not made a sound in over an hour. Thousands have sat in the stands, watching something they had never imagined possible. Their grace warrior, the undefeated champion of their people, was being broken by a creature half his size. Vex stumbled. His right leg buckled beneath him, and for a terrible moment it seemed like he would fall. But he caught himself, forcing his body upright through sheer willpower. He kept moving, one agonizing step at a time. Saw it happen. He saw the pain on Vex's face, the desperation in those cold eyes, and he made a choice that surprised even himself. He slowed down. Instead of pulling ahead, instead of driving his advantage and leaving Vex behind, Dane matched his pace with the struggling warrior. They ran side by side, 2 exalted beings held together by stubbornness and pride. Vex noticed, his head turned slightly, those cold eyes fixing on Dane with confusion. What are you doing, human? He had to take several breaths before he could answer. Running with you. You could finch me now, you could push ahead and I would not be able to follow. Why do you not take your victory? He thought about the question. His thoughts were slow and heavy, weighed down by exhaustion. Because that is not what I came here for. I came to prove that humans have worth, not to destroy a good warrior's honor. Vex was silent for a long moment. They continued to run together step by step, breath by breath. Finally, Vex spoke again. I do not understand you. Any in your position would take every advantage. That is what warriors do. I'm not a warrior, Dan replied. I'm an engineer. I fix things. I build things. I solve problems. Crushing you into the dirt does not solve anything. It just creates anger and resentment. Then what do you want? He looked at the massive warrior beside him. For all his power, all his strength, all his deadly skill, Vex looked almost vulnerable in that moment. He was facing something he had never faced before, and he did not know how to handle it. I want us to be friends, Dan said simply. Humans, and I want our peoples to work together, to learn from each other, to grow stronger together. That is worth more than any victory in an arena. Ran in silence for another few minutes. The crowd remained quiet, watching the strange scene unfold. 2 enemies who had become something else entirely, moving together through the silver moonlight. Then Vex's legs gave out. There was no warning, no stumble this time. His muscles simply stopped working, and he collapsed to his knees in the sand. His forearm caught him before he fell face first, but he could not rise. His body had reached its absolute limit. Reen held its breath. This was the moment of victory. This was when the human should celebrate his triumph, should raise his arms and accept the cheers of the crowd. Stop running. He turned back to where Vex knelt in the sand, and he walked over to the fallen warrior. Then he knelt down beside him. "What are you doing?" Vex demanded. His voice was weak and broken by exhaustion. "You," Dane said. He reached out and put a hand on Vex's shoulder, helping to steady him. Then he pulled out a small container of water that he had been carrying and offered it to the commander. "Drink. You need it more than I do." Vex stared at him. Then slowly he reached out with one trembling hand and took the water. He drank deeply, his eyes never leaving Dane's face. "You're a strange creature, Dane Cole," Vex said when he finished. "I have fought enemies from a dozen species. I have killed more than I can count, but I have never met anyone like you." "They're full of surprises," Dane replied. He was smiling despite his exhaustion. "Give us a chance and we might surprise you even more." Above them rose from her seat. The crowd watched as the High Matriarch descended from her platform, walking down a long stairway until she reached the arena floor. Her footsteps were silent as she approached the two figures kneeling in the sand. Tried to stand, tried to show proper respect, but his legs refused to cooperate. He remained on his knees beside Vex and stopped before them. The Matriarch looked down at him with an expression he could not read. Her golden eyes seemed to glow brighter in the moonlight, and her presence filled the arena like a physical force. "Of one Dane Cole," she said, her voice carried across the silent crowd. "Commander Vex has fallen, the trial is complete." And not slowly, "Thank you, High Matriarch." It was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Vex, then back at Danny, then at the water container in Vex's hand. "My years, I have never seen anything like what happened here tonight," she said. "I expected combat, I expected blood. I expected a quick death for the soft little human who dared to challenge my champion." She paused. "Instead, I saw something far more valuable. I saw mercy. I saw compassion. I saw strength of a kind we have forgotten." Extended one of her 4 hands toward Danny. "Rise, Dane Cole of Earth. We have much to discuss." Took her hand and let her pull him to his feet. His legs screamed in protest, but he forced them to hold his weight. He was not going to collapse now, not after everything he had endured. To the crowd and raised her voice. "The trial is complete. The human is victorious. Tomorrow we will gather to discuss what that means for our people." The crowd began to stir, whispers spreading like ripples in water. Dane could not tell what they were thinking, whether they were angry or confused or something else entirely. But it did not matter. He had done what he came to do. He rose to his feet with tremendous effort. He stood beside Danny, his massive form still dwarfing the human. But something had changed between them. The coldness in his eyes was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. "Fought well, human," Vex said quietly. "Better than anyone expected. Better than I expected." He smiled despite his exhaustion. "I told you, humans are full of surprises." Vex made a sound that might have been a laugh. Then he placed one of his massive hands on Danny's shoulder, a gesture of acknowledgement between equals. The defeated champion and the unlikely victor walked out of the arena under the silver light of 3 moons. The throne room was filled with more than Danny had ever seen in one place. Representatives from every major clan had gathered at its summons, their silver scales reflecting the light that poured through the crystal walls. Warriors, scholars, diplomats, and nobles stood in neat rows, all of them watching as Danny walked the long path toward the throne. Legs still ached from the trial. Every step sent pain shooting through muscles that had been pushed far beyond their limits. But Danny walked with his head high and his back straight. He had earned the right to stand before these people, and he was not going to show weakness now. On her throne in full ceremonial dress, robes of deep purple trimmed with gold that sparkled in the light. Her 4 arms rested on the armrests of her gemstone seat, and her golden eyes tracked Danny's approach with an intensity that made his heart race. At the foot of the throne, Commander Vex stood at attention. He was wearing his full battle armor now, polished to a mere shine. But when his eyes met Danny's, there was warmth in them instead of coldness. Something had changed between them in that arena, something that went beyond the trial itself. He stood among the scholars, his ancient face showing what might have been a smile. He had helped Danny when no one else would, and now they both waited to see if that help would bear fruit. He stopped at the base of the steps and bowed his head. The hall fell completely silent. "Cole of Earth," said. Her voice filled the room without effort. "You have completed the trial of worth. You have defeated Commander Vex, the strongest warrior of our people. According to our laws and customs, you have earned the right to stand as ambassador between our peoples." And raised his head. "Thank you, High Matriarch." To him for a long moment. Then she rose from her throne and descended the steps until she stood before him. This close, Danny was struck again by how tall she was, how powerful, how beautiful in her terrifying way. She could crush him without effort if she chose to. Instead, she was listening. "I must confess something to you," Dane Cole said. "When I first proposed this trial, I expected you to fail. I expected you to fight to lose and to die quickly. It would have been a simple end to a complicated problem." And said nothing, he simply waited. "You surprised me," continued. "You did not fight. You did not try to match strength against strength. Instead, you found another way, a way that revealed something about your species that we had never considered." She paused. "You showed us that there are kinds of strength we do not possess." Representatives from the other clans murmured among themselves. This was not what they had expected to hear from their High Matriarch. Then that said, raising her voice to silence the murmurs, "You showed us something about ourselves that we had forgotten. When you helped Commander Vex instead of celebrating his defeat, when you offered him water and comfort instead of mockery, you reminded us that true strength includes mercy. True victory includes compassion." And to faith the gathered crowd, "We have become a warrior cult. We value strength above all else. We have conquered, we have expanded, we have built an empire that spans 100 worlds. But somewhere along the way, we lost something important. We forgot that power without wisdom is just destruction. We forgot that victory without honor is just cruelty." All was completely silent now. Every listened as their ruler spoke words that challenged centuries of tradition. As Hume reminded us, said, "In a single night through a single act of kindness, he showed us what we have been missing." She turned back to Danny. "And that is why I am not simply accepting you as ambassador." It felt a moment of confusion. High Matriarch. It was not the small, barely visible smile he had seen before. This was a full smile, warm and genuine and surprising kind. "I am accepting you as equal partner in the alliance between our peoples. Not a representative who speaks for others, but a leader who stands beside me in making decisions." Murmurs returned, louder this time. Several of the clan representatives stepped forward with objections on their lips, but before they could speak, another voice cut through the noise. "I support the decision." When turned to look at Commander Vex, the massive warrior had stepped forward, his armor gleaming in the light. Served the High Matriarch for 30 years, Vex said. I have fought our enemies, protected her throne, and given them loyalty without question. In all the time, I have never met anyone who impressed me more than this human. He looked at Dane with respect clear in his eyes. He could have humiliated me. He could have left me broken in the sand while he celebrated his victory. Instead, he helped me. He offered me kindness when I had nothing to offer in return. It is not the act of a weak creature. That is the act of someone worthy of leading. Clan representative fell silent. Vex's endorsement carried tremendous weight, and they knew it. Step forward as well. I have studied the records of 1,000 species, the old scholar said. I have read about their strengths and weaknesses, their victories and defeats. I believed I understood what made a species great. But this human taught me something new. He taught me that greatness is not about power. It is about character. It is about what you do when you have power and choose not to use it cruelly. By one, other voices rose in support. Warriors who had watched the trial and seen something they could not forget. Scholars who had heard Dane speak and recognized wisdom in his words. Diplomats who saw the opportunity for a new kind of alliance, one built on mutual respect rather than fear. His hand in silence fell once more. The matter is decided. Earthen will be allies. Dane Cole will stand as partner in the alliance with all the rights and responsibilities it entails. Descended the final step until she stood directly in front of Danny. Then she reached out and took his hand in one of hers. Her grip was warm and strong. To the Dane Cole of Earth, she said, I look forward to seeing what our peoples can build together. Looked up at her, this warrior queen who ruled an empire of 100 worlds. Then he looked at Vex, who had been his enemy and was now his friend. Then at who had helped him when no one else would. Then at the crowd of who were watching with expressions that ranged from curiosity to respect to something that might have been hope. Thank you, Dane said simply. I promise you will not regret the decision. Evening Dane stood on a balcony overlooking the Crystal City. The 3 moons hung low in the sky, casting silver light across the towers and streets. Somewhere below were talking about what had happened in the arena, what had happened in the throne room, what it all meant for their future. Pulled out his communication device, the one that had been repaired along with his ship. He activated it and began recording a message. This is Dane Cole, cargo engineer, formerly of the transport Vittlebell. I am sending the message to Earth to anyone who will listen. I have made contact with a species called the. They are powerful, advanced, and they have agreed to become our allies. Paused, looking up at the unfamiliar stars. This sounds impossible. I know you will have questions, but I want you to understand something important. This alliance did not happen because we proved we were strong. It happened because we proved we were kind. It happened because one human showed mercy to an enemy and changed their understanding of what humanity could be. Took a deep breath. This is just the beginning. There is a whole galaxy out there waiting for us, and if we face it with courage, wisdom, and compassion, there is nothing we cannot achieve. He did the message and sent it toward the stars. Then he turned and walked back inside, where he was waiting to discuss the future. The first time since his ship had crashed on this alien world, Dane Cole felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be.